we go, okay, these businesses are doing it, so I'll do that too. I think it's more important these days that people want to focus on autonomy and mastery and really linking what they do into their businesses as well. We want to systemize things more. We want to get that cadence and that rhythm going of things more, but we don't want to dehumanize things. We want to make sure that as our teams get bigger, and that might be you've got 2 people and then you're joining 2 more people. Well, guess what? You've just doubled in your team size. So just thinking about those, whether you're going from 2 to 4 or whether you're going from 30 to 50 people, whatever it might be in terms of the size of your business, just thinking through some of those ideas in terms of ensuring that you stay connected to your people and it starts to make a difference. Hello, everybody, and welcome to all of you listeners, watchers of the Passion Institute podcast. Firstly, I just want to thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. I appreciate that your time is valuable, and so thank you for doing that. Secondly, I wanted to give you a quick overview of what I'm going to be talking about today, and we're going to dive into how do we scale our businesses through our people, who are absolutely our most powerful asset. So one of the things you want to do is whether you're hiring your 5th or your 50th employee, I want to take you through some thoughts, some ideas, something that you might already be doing well that you go, actually, that's an interesting idea. I might do that better. Or you are not doing that and you get some ideas to be able to do that. So this is really for leaders that are trying to scale their teams. They've got a lot of work that's coming in. And how do you actually go about doing that when you want to hire and engage some of the right people, particularly when you're going through that scaling stage? So the first thing that's really important, and I talk about this a lot, is that we've got to really look at our hiring process. And we don't just want to look at our hiring process, we want to evolve through our hiring process. What do I mean by the word evolve? Well, when you look at, from a spiritual perspective, when we look at the great masters, they talked about enlightenment, that we got better at not reacting to reach that state of enlightenment. How does that mean in terms of evolving the hiring process? Well, you kind of want to hire, but also without losing the soul, right? So you want to shift from just having the standard process. You want to really look at how do you keep your cultural DNA in your business? How do you keep that alive in every hire? And every key person that you hire and are able to engage, especially when you're scaling and growing a business, and teams, whether they're hybrid teams or face-to-face teams, whatever they are, when you're growing people in your teams, it is so important to make sure that we actually get that cultural fit, and we do that a little bit more. And we also, as part of that process, in terms of being able to engage really high-end people that are really smart, they love being kind of left alone a little bit. So we want to hire the right people, but we want to empower from an engagement perspective, give them all the tools, give them all the training, give them the accountability, and let them run it. Because people that are pretty smart hate being micromanaged. The other thing I believe that businesses really need to do, and as leaders we need to do, is that we really need to look at our employer value proposition. We talk about value proposition to our clients or our VP all the time, but we've also got to look at our EVP. What's the value proposition that we have as an employer to the employees? Because that is stuff that you do that is beyond a salary. That is where, not only are you looking at that you've already got your mission and your vision, etc., but this is where, as a leader, you are communicating your vision through stories. You are talking about your values and your culture through storytelling. So that really helps people link into what it is that you're trying to create. And that EVP, that value proposition for employees, it needs to be super clear from the times that you do your ads to when you're interviewing, to when you're onboarding, and constantly in some of your team meetings in terms of what you do. A lot of people talk about, well, people, there's people and there's data. But the question here becomes, when you are really trying to create a new culture and really grow people and teams, is how do we intersect the two? How do we use data to drive our talent decisions? For example, how often are you doing engagement surveys? What's your turnover data? Why are people leaving at the exit interviews? Do you know some of that? So also knowing who some of the top performers are. So not just doing this when they exit, but looking at some of your top performers and interviewing them. What makes them stay? Why do they want to stay in your business? And how do we replicate that more from end-to-end process around what we do here? We also want to layer in the leadership at the right time. So for example, middle management becomes really essential to your business as you are growing, because you can't have all these people directly reporting to you, and you might already have some middle managers, but how do we invest in the training of those emerging managers and leaders? Also, the ones that might be plan Bs and plan Cs, as I talk about in a number of my books and the podcast, is, how do we actually create some of that path of leadership within that business from them? And if we really invest in them, then we are able to also promote within. And what we want to do is have experienced managers, not only in terms of their skills, but also in terms of the culture that you have in your business. I also want to talk about the fact that when we're scaling culture, we want to do it very, very intentionally. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that culture can drift as your teams start to grow. So you have people that have been there for a while, but new people come in, and that culture, to maintain it as teams go, can get diluted very quickly. So we want to use rituals, whether you have town halls, whether you have onboarding stories, whether you have people that maybe even be championing perhaps the culture in your business to reinforce who you are and what your culture is and what you stand for. And we also want to have kind of a decision-making, a framework, not just a poster that we've got. We actually want to say, well, how do we actually make decisions around our values so that we're not just making decisions around what's going to make us the most amount of money, for example. So how do we intentionally start to look at some of the bigger elements of culture as we start to grow our teams as well? Strategic process is, I'm a big fan of strategic planning, but more importantly of the planning, it's the implementation of it. And the implementation of it, as I talk to all the leaders that I might be working about, I say to them, have your 5 or 10-year plans, but make sure you've got a very clear 12-year plan. But more importantly, make sure you've got a very clear 90-day plan. What are you going to do in the next quarter? And can your people see what they need to do to be able to deliver that? That's a really, really big part of that strategic process. And so strategic process and planning is great, but we want to make it practical. We want to know what the KPIs are. And we want to be able to measure them, whether it's daily, weekly, definitely monthly, definitely that links into your quarter, and then definitely that links into your year. So you want to be able to do that. And you want to make sure that onboarding occurs not just in HR and your HR part of the departments, but other parts as well. The other thing that's always a little bit controversial is talking about reward. Do we reward the performance or do we reward tenure? My experience has been that it's so important to know your people to work out whether they actually want to move into management roles. Sometimes people that have been there for a while don't really want to move into management. They might not want people responsibility. So rather than just giving it to them, we want to reward that performance. We want to make sure we understand our people and what it is that they want to achieve in their path of leadership as well. And so, sometimes going from the informal updates to making sure that we've got frameworks or bonus structures that allows to be able to give people the performance in terms of what they do. It recognizes your high achievers, not just your long-term employees. So it starts to create a little bit of friction in your teams, but they know that as long as they do well, not just the number of hours they put in, it's actually performance-based. Communication becomes even bigger. It's always the number one issue in teams and when you're managing people, but it becomes even bigger as your teams start to grow and as you're scaling. So making sure that we go from this informal stuff to a little bit more structured, making sure whether you're actually even doing some internal newsletters or little videos, giving perhaps some leadership updates, just making sure that people are aligned without overwhelming them. And the best ones that I see is when the leader is kind of either doing a weekly 90-second, 2-minute video, like here are some wins, but certainly on a monthly basis that you're actually getting that. And then everybody's getting an input in terms of where their manager or leader is actually, what they're achieving and what they're up to. And as you get bigger, and particularly if you're getting bigger very fast in your businesses, then you want to be fairly agile and fairly flexible with your organizational design. You don't want to go, right, this is it for the next 3 years. You want to have enough flexibility so that as that happens and some of the responsibilities of some of the people in your business start to evolve, that you can do that. Again, having some pulse surveys, which take 1 or 2 minutes, doing that regularly, doing an occasional interview to find out where people are at. I guess what you're trying to do really there is just to make sure that people are traveling okay to well. And the last thing that I want to share is that how do we engage with purpose? Not just, giving people perks, for example. So how do we really engage people to show how their work connects to the company goals? How do we, I know that lots of businesses have got, a pool table or a ping pong table. That's fantastic. And that's great ways socially for people to interact, have some mindfulness in there. But I'm talking about not just those little, things that we go, okay, these businesses are doing it, so I'll do that too. I think it's more important these days that people want to focus on autonomy and mastery and really linking what they do into their businesses as well. The key thing in this particular podcast is that we want to systemize things more. We want to get that cadence and that rhythm going of things more, but we don't want to dehumanize things. We want to make sure that as our teams get bigger, and that might be you've got 2 people and then you're joining 2 more people. Well, guess what? You've just doubled in your team size. So just thinking about those, whether you're going from 2 to 4 or whether you're going from 30 to 50 people, whatever it might be in terms of the size of your business, just thinking through some of those ideas in terms of ensuring that you stay connected to your people and it starts to make a difference. Thank you for tuning in. I always appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for joining us on the Passion Institute podcast. If today's episode sparked a new idea or inspired you to maybe take some action or helped you see a business in a new light, we would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us present a great show. Leave a review and share this episode with other fellow entrepreneurs and leaders who also are ready to make an impact. Remember, passion is the fuel for greatness, and every step you take brings you closer to your vision. Keep dreaming big, leading with purpose, and making waves in the world. Until next time, stay passionate, stay inspired, and keep building your legacy. This is your host, Shivani, and signing on from the Passion Institute podcast. See you soon.